Welcome to the Limited Lives podcast, formerly Bite-Sized Games. I'm Dennis, and I yearn for gardening mysteries. Who do I have with me, as always?
I'm Phil, and you can call me Big Boss.
All right, Big Boss. My name is Matt, and since we decided to change our names, our podcast name, I also decided to get a haircut today. So those of you watching on YouTube, do enjoy.
I thought you were going to say, since we changed our podcast name, I also decided to change my name. So I'm no longer Matt.
I didn't go that far.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, as our listeners would have just heard, we are doing a slight rebranding. Podcast format itself is not going to change, but we decided to kind of update ourselves, and we're going by Limited Lives now. That's not going to change any previous episodes. Everything will stay up as it once was. No changes there, but going forward, we may be changing some in branding and logos, and be prepared for that.
Yeah,
but we'll still be as old as usual and as cool as we always are. On today's episode, we're going to be covering a game called Grunn, Grunn. It is a game from a developer called Sokpop Collective, also published by Sokpop Collective. But before we get into that, I want to ask you guys, kind of related to this game, but I do have a question for you. What is a time when you were completely surprised by a game, more gameplay-wise, some game in your history that you played that kind of took you by surprise? I know definitely that kind of thing happens narratively, but I'm speaking more to different ways, not like story shock, but gameplay shock or genre shock, something like that. So to start us off, Matt, will you start us off?
Sure. I mean, this game, I know the reason why you're asking this question is because this game that we're playing today, or we played for this episode called Grunn, it kind of fits under this category. It definitely does for me. But since we're going to talk about that game, I thought about this, and it was kind of hard. There weren't actually that many, and I think one of the reasons is because of marketing. Usually kind of shows you exactly what game you're going to be getting into before you play it. I usually don't go into playing games completely blind, and there are very few times where games will actually completely, surprise you. They usually stick to what's shown. So, but I did end up choosing Inscription, which is a pretty recent game. I wouldn't say it's fully a shock in terms of the gameplay, but there are a lot of surprises and like things that I definitely did not expect to happen in that game. For example, there's a lot of it starts off as kind of like this kind of quirky, dark deck building game, but it kind of turns into this horror escape room type of game that's very heavy on story, which I was not really expecting from a deck building game. Very heavy on the story, and also there's like a bunch of meta stuff in it, like there's real life videos, like you're playing like a real character playing a game, basically. Like that's who you're actually playing. You're playing as a dude playing a game on a computer. So I don't know, maybe that's more story sense. It was kind of a shock, but that game was very surprising. I mean, I loved it. Inscription was definitely one of those games that had a big impact on me. So I really enjoyed it. But yes, it was surprising, and yeah, great game. So I would recommend it. I kind of just gave a lot of it away, but I would recommend going in blind as much as possible.
Yeah,
erase everything you just heard for the last minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone who's familiar with Daniel Mullins and his games, they all have that meta aspect to them. I think the famous one before.
What other games does he have?
Pony Island, I think, was his other game that was popular before that.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even look into who made it.
I think Inscription was more his more mainstream hit, if you want to call it that. It's still an indie game, but I think other ones are more underground.
Pony
cult
Island.
names.
That just does not come up on my radar as something I would play though.
Yeah,
That's
it's another game about a dev like play testing a game called Pony Island, but there's something evil going on in the background.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Interesting.
So, Inscription though, great choice. That actually came across for me as well. So, but
Nice.
it's not mine. But Phil, let's hear yours.
Okay, I'm going much further back, and I went with Katamari actually.
Oh, I actually kind of thought about that game too.
Yeah, it's like I don't even know. Like I don't know if there's another game that you can make that's like that, not call it Katamari, but it's just it was such a unique. I remember putting it on, and I just didn't know what the hell this was, kind of thing. You're just rolling around and becoming this. You start off as like the size of like a pencil, like an eraser, basically, in like a room, and then you slowly turn in, collect enough stuff on your ball. It sounds ridiculous, I guess, and grow in size until you're basically rolling on the planet, and then you eventually go to space or something. So it's pretty ridiculous. Yeah, and unique game. So,
question for you: did you, when you went into playing Katamari? I think because I played it as well. I played Katamari Damacy on PlayStation 2 or whatever it was, but I already knew what it was, kind of like, or someone had told me. I can't remember exactly, but when you played it, did you basically went in completely blind? Is that what
I went in blind? I mean, I think it was a demo. If I recall, it was like it might have been back in the day when those demo discs were coming. With
demo discs,
magazines.
yeah.
Still, it was like it's still that time, and I remember playing the demo, and I was like, "What is this?" And then and then I just wanted to kind of play it. So I kind of had was really in the Katamari phase for like the first one at least. I'm not sure what happened to the other ones, but yeah.
Dude, bring demo discs back. Bring them back.
Well, there are online demos. So you can get demos on.
But now you have to
it's not the same.
I don't know. It's not the same. You don't get like a random, like someone else curates those, right? But for us, you have to like choose which games and which demos you want to download, and like you're gonna look into what the game is.
Here's 1,000 demos. Have fun.
Right.
I want to go to the convenience store and like you buy your like peanuts and stuff, and the person's like slides you demo. They're like,
your peanuts.
You get your peanuts and shit, and then like someone just slides you a demo disc. That I want, you know what I mean? Bring that back. Just
should
like
come with a purchase.
just
type of
random
thing.
ass.
You don't even you can't even buy physical game magazines anymore.
Famitsu still has a game magazine.
Yeah.
Well, Japan.
That's in Japan.
Japan is an exception for everything.
Right. Print media still exists.
We are like a little bit older legitly, but like if you're a person that's younger and you play games, like what do you look at? Because I remember those video game magazines being very exciting, and like
dude, I would
spend so much time.
But
We kind of have, but it's like, what would you be so excited about as like a 10-year-old gamer now? Like,
doesn't exist,
know.
man. It's sad. I feel like internet news is not nearly as exciting as reading those magazines was back in the day.
Yeah.
Well, that's just, I think, time. It's a different time.
Sadly.
I don't know what it's like.
As much. The fact that I used to be able to play a demo disc like over and over again, repeat the same level over and over again for like years is ridiculous. Like
I think
never
that
do
was
anything like that now.
I mean, we're diving into demo disc, but that's also like when Metal Gear Solid became. I think that's how Metal Gear Solid became so hyped up, was from the demo, because there was. I just remember it was just that first area where you're in the snow and trying to get inside.
Deep though.
Like, it was awesome, and there were so many different ways you could do it, and it was so fresh, and like people here are so used to that type of thing these days, but that gameplay,
they don't know what it's like.
Unheard of. It was unheard of in those days.
Yeah.
So for my gaming shock, my gaming surprise, I was gonna pick Max Payne the first time I played Max Payne, because up until that point, like, yeah, third-person shooters existed, and I'd played like action games, but the first time I experienced like bullet time in a game was like it's the kind of thing that you can read about in a magazine. And I think at that time it wasn't that common to watch gameplay videos, so you didn't see it in action. So it wasn't until actually playing the game for the first time that it was like crap your pants awesome.
That's true.
Like, wow, this is awesome. I can't believe this. Like, this is so much cooler than I expected. And then, for like a couple years, every action game was implementing bullet time in some way. There was so many rip-offs of that because it was cool.
That was a good. Yeah, I agree with that choice.
The first bullet time game, was it? Probably was.
Pretty much hailed as that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something more like rudimentary that existed before that wasn't as popular, but that's the one that broke.
And it was just a good game as well. Great story, awesome setting.
Writing. Yeah, it was very cool.
It was a full package. It wasn't just that. It was like that and everything else too.
More bullet time, triple the bullet time. Max Payne 2.
That's held up over all these years, whereas all those other bullet time games nobody talks about. Dead to Rights, Blood Rain.
I remember that. I remember Dead to Rights.
Dead to Rights wasn't that bad actually.
Wasn't there? You had a dog in that game, I think.
Yeah, you did. You could sick the dog on people.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the cool things in that game.
Yeah, that was Xbox, I think. Original OG Xbox. All right. So the reason, as we were saying before, the reason I brought up that question is because the game that we're covering today, if you manage to avoid reading about it, it could be a surprising game for, I think, many game players. And that is Grunn. As I said, from Sokpop Collective. This game came out last year in October. So still pretty fresh. Sokpop Collective is an indie dev out of the Netherlands. And it's only four people. And they basically... I read up a little bit on their history, and they met through game jams, and then they just got along really well and were really into making games quickly, and had practice doing so. So that's kind of how they founded Sokpop Collective, and they kind of apply that game jam mentality for their entire dev company. And they have this subscription service where they release games every month for like $3 a month. If you join their Patreon, they release a new game every month. Certain games from that service they might develop further into more like more serious, like larger games, if they deem them worthy or successful. But yeah, they're a pretty interesting company. I think they have over 100 games in their gameography now, although most of which you probably haven't heard of. For a while, they were releasing games on itch.io, and I think only in the recent years they've appeared on Steam, and I think Grunn has gained them a bit of attention. Grunn, what is Grunn? So they kind of advertise it as a perfectly normal gardening simulator. But you quickly learn that there's more than meets the eye, much like the Transformers. So even if you go to the Steam page, they try not to give away too much, and they're being coy and saying, yeah, it's just a game about you going to the some little town in the countryside, and a Dutch countryside, and you got to cut the grass. And but yeah, it's more of a mystery game, a time loop mystery, as it were. So let's get into it.
Sorry, just a quick question. Do you know, was Grunn one of the games they created in like one of those months?
So I tried to look into it, and I couldn't find Grunn in any of those like pre-release versions. So I looked at all of the collections of their
it just games. I asked because it does feel like a more of a fleshed out game, which probably was made more than a month. I would have imagined if they made this within a month, I'd be amazed.
Well, what I can say is I did see other games that were in those collections that have like Steam releases. I think Broom was one of them, Brume. And I noticed, looking at the previous games, they all have similar art design. and some of them have a similar build, like look to Grunn, same kind of 3D environments. They had one that was like a stealth game where you go around stealing stuff from people's houses, kind of like in Skyrim, but it has the similar graphics as Grunn. So I'm sure there's a lot of inspiration from all of those games that they've been making that gave them, the practice to get to the point where they made Grunn. But I couldn't find if there was like a more rudimentary version of it.
Gotcha.
So not sure about that. So how long did it take for you to beat this game? And tell me your thoughts, but keep it brief. Phil.
It took me about 3.5 to 4 hours to beat. And my thoughts are, it's an intriguing little title. So it's an intriguing little title, but I'm not sure I'll be back for more Grunn.
It's an intriguing thought. Right.
Yeah.
It is. How about you, Matt?
I thought Grunn, it was a kind of a, like you said, unassuming gardening sim that quickly, for me, hooked its addictive teeth into me and took me on this kind of wild ride that I really enjoyed quite a bit. So, and I couldn't really put it down. So I kept playing it, and I really enjoyed this game a lot.
Similarly, I had so much fun with Grunn, and I really loved how simple the premise and unassuming setting is just a front for this really odd mystery game. And as we've talked about before, Outer Wilds was like my favorite game of the year that came out, and that's how I heard about this game initially. I saw it recommended for people who were into Outer Wilds, and that was like, whoop, instant buy for me.
Nice.
And it's like, even though it isn't obviously Outer Wilds, but it does share some common gameplay elements, and I was hooked, addicted as well.
I was actually considering choosing Outer Wilds as an answer to your earlier question about what game that surprised me, and I do understand why it would be recommended, why this game would be recommended if you like that game. My only thing would be like this, I feel like the Steam page, it's intentionally misleading, but to the point where you think like, what the hell, this doesn't look anything like Outer Wilds. Why? Like, I'm not interested. So that's why I'm giving you props for actually going ahead and buying it just because it was recommended to you, because I think I probably
I
would have
also
seen that Steam page and be like, I don't think I'm gonna buy this, but because we're doing this podcast, I bought it, and I do not regret it at all.
Also, it took me about 5 hours, but I did put in probably about 7 hours just kind of exploring different endings.
That's a lot. I didn't mention it for me. I got the ending, I guess you could say the real kind of ending, in 3.5 hours, 3.5 hours. But I did continue to play it for another hour or so on top of that. So I ended around 5 hours, I think.
Yeah, this is a game that has multiple endings, but I guess there is
11
kind of like true ending. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the gameplay.
Sure. So Grunn basically is a first-person game where you start off, as we said, as a kind of a simple gardening sim. It starts off also as a kind of puzzle game. Sort of, it's like the first thing you have to do is find a key to open a gate, and it's just, it's lying among some bushes on the side, but it gives you, the heads up that like, hey, it's not just shearing and cutting grass and things like this. You're gonna also have to figure out how to find stuff. So you find like a key, you just pick it up, open the gate, go in, then you find the shears. It tells you a list of things to do. Like cut the grass, you just go around cutting grass, and trim the hedges, pick up the garbage, things like that. And it gives you a percentage meter of like how much complete you are for the section, for the area you're in. You do only start, in one smaller area, but it quickly opens up into several different areas, not all of which, but a number of which need gardening attended to. But on top of that, it also becomes this kind of, you find these, I don't really remember how it kind of really starts, but you kind of notice things that are not normal are happening. Well, I guess one of the main things is that when you talk, there are people, and when you talk to them, they don't speak in normal language, and it often says you don't understand what this person is saying. So that's kind of a hint that this is kind of an odd place.
I think the first time I notice it is the bus driver who drops you off. Like,
right.
if you go up and try to talk to her, it's just like, and then it says you don't understand what she's saying.
Right. It sounds like the mom or the teacher in Peanuts. I
kind of assumed it was just like The Sims or something, and that's how everyone talks.
Right.
So I was like,
that's what I thought too. It was like, oh, okay. But then it says like you don't actually understand what they're saying. So like, okay, so this is a bit strange. But then it just gets more and more, and like the more you kind of explore, the more kind of odd things you find. And like one of the things is like in the note, it says like the house is off limits type of thing, like do not go in the house type of thing. So you're like, okay, this is a little bit strange. And then suddenly you get some like jump scares, and you see like some ghosts and like skeletons and all these things kind of gradually, you find keys to these doors, and you kind of just explore and find out that there's something much more nefarious going on. And basically it turns into this big mystery that you kind of have to figure out. You don't really know what you're solving, but you kind of have to figure it out as you go. And there's 3 days, basically you have 3 days to do it. Within those 3 days, you're going to get some kind of ending, whether it's good or bad. Depends on how you play. Usually, probably for most people, the first time you play through it, at least you're gonna get one of the maybe negative or not real final endings. And then once you die, or once you get that ending, sorry, some of them are deaths, but once you do get an ending, it just starts you over from the very beginning. And this is not a roguelike game. It's not randomly generated. Everything is the same every single time, and it does not give you progress that you made last time. Actually, it does a little bit. The photographs that you find that give a little bit. You can find these photographs around that are just like Polaroids, and they don't really tell you much, but they just give you a little tiny hint of something you can do or something you can find and where to find it. And that does carry over. So once you pick up a Polaroid, you're not going to find it in your next playthrough, but you can keep it in your inventory. But everything else that you pick up, like the shears or all these, you can find a bunch of different items in the game. You don't get those back when you start over again. So you have to basically start from scratch, and you just keep playing. And every time you play, you basically learn something new. You kind of, get a little bit further. You find a different mystery there's to solve. There's a bunch of different, basically there's a lot of kind of different things happening that you can kind of solve. So you have a lot of options of how you approach it, which was a lot of fun.
You don't have to, you can ignore the majority of them.
Right.
You can just focus on the main mystery, which is basically how to stop, spoiler alert, not really, because you pretty much figure this out early on. Like you're there on a weekend. You arrive on Saturday, and then on Monday afternoon, a fog creeps in that resets everything.
If you don't get an ending before that time, it automatically ends the game for you, basically.
So you learn that, okay, well, I need to stop that from happening and figure out what's going on, and that becomes your kind of core mystery.
For me, it did take a while before actually I got to that point. Every time ahead of that, I either died or got some. One of the endings is get back on the bus and leave. That's one of the first endings, I think. Not the first one. The first one was a death, but it was one of the first ones. But basically, every time you play, you're learning a little bit more, and you're exploring something new and finding something new.
That's
what's going on.
The outer wildsness of it is
yes, it's definitely
that's a game that your knowledge is the key to move forward.
Right. It's very, very similar to Outer Wilds.
I haven't played Outer Wilds, so I don't have that frame of reference. But I guess in short, without getting into diving into the woods too much, but the loop is enjoyable at the same time, kind of troublesome or annoying in a way for me. So it's when you die, especially if you feel like you were really close. There's a couple times I was I know I'm really close to completing all this stuff. I'm right on the cusp. And then it's oh, you got to do it all over again. And so that whole, and it's going to take you at least 30 minutes or something like that.
What? 30 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, you got to run around. You got to do. I mean, I don't know if you have to do all the steps. I'm not sure you have to do all the steps. I treated it like you got to complete all these things in certain areas, and so if you're trying to do that, and then some of the things you have to do that are not exactly like. They just take time, no matter what. Like if you're going to shear all the bushes and cut the grass, that just takes time.
But it doesn't take long before you realize that the actual gardening tasks are unnecessary.
Completely unnecessary, not required at all.
Well, I guess for me, I wasn't sure. I mean, well, that's what I was saying. It was what you say now, but for me, I wasn't sure like what was necessary and what was not necessary. So like now you say that, I didn't know that, and I still really didn't know that to this point. So I assumed you still have to kind of do all those things.
They do give you, and it's misleading. They give you a meter.
They give you an objective in the beginning.
You know.
Yeah. It's one of the first things you see.
Yeah, and they show you the percentage of how far along you are completing, and then they even add it not for the immediate area you're assigned to, but like the park and the church, which are different areas surrounding you, also have
meters.
They have their own meters,
and you can tend.
And completing, let's just say, like completing all of the 100% gardening, all of those areas does take like a while.
That's what I'm saying. So that takes time, and when you start the game, it tells you what your initial objective is when you're in a house. So you think this is what you're supposed to do. At least I was under the impression you still had to do that basically every time. So it's like I came out the door, I had to do this, cuddle the grass, blah 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 blah. You know.
Yeah,
I'm getting paid to do this job. So
if you did I didn't know. I understand why you would be a bit frustrated, because I do agree that the game is not super clear on like what triggers what. Sometimes there are points in the game where something gets triggered and you don't really know why, and
or
that can
or where sometimes
or where, and so it could be like, okay, I did something or something happened, but I don't really know what it was. So you could end up thinking like I do have to like 100% all of these areas, when in fact, because I kind of just. But after a few runs, I just stopped doing any of the gardening, and I was focused on progressing through whatever the story or it is, other things. And then I realized, you don't really actually have to do any of the gardening. That's one of the things I actually, after I finished the game and got the ending, that's why I went back and like, okay, well, I want to see what happens when I do all of the gardening for every area, when I get 100% in all the areas.
What does happen when you do?
Yeah, what happens when you do?
You get
the garden.
I don't know. You get like an apple or something.
Okay, so you played it like that. I see.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of like. There was a couple towards the end that was like getting a little annoying. Like, oh, I got to do all that again. Like, I got to spend 20 minutes cutting grass again. Yay!
Right.
So that kind of wasn't that fun of an experience for me to deal with. But I didn't know. Yeah, I still really didn't know. Like, what do I have to do this? I assume some of these doors open up because I did that. You know what I mean? You do the grass.
I can see that being frustrating. Like,
yeah, that would be tedious. That would definitely be tedious to play it like that. For me, I didn't have that.
You now know you don't have to do that. I guess.
Yes, you don't have to do that. And I got to this point where I was basically, thinking I was addicted to playing it. I wanted to keep playing it. I wanted to every time I found some new ending, I wanted to start again because I felt like I was getting closer and closer to the real ending. And it came to the point where I had to put it down. And after I put it down, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I was thinking about when my next run comes, like when I play again, what route am I going to take? Which things should I do first? Like all these different, because there's so many things you could do. There's a lot of different options. And everything kind of leads in different directions. But there is definitely the most efficient, if you're trying to just get to the ending,
it's like maximizing efficiency is the name
you are
of the
in a
game,
limited time. You only have 3 days. Yeah. And there's things within those 3 days that are also time limited, like getting the toilet paper to the guy in the bathroom in the morning of the first day, that type of thing. So
the game becomes like
it became this kind of like puzzle in my mind that was in like thinking. I was thinking about it outside of when I was playing the game, which was fun. Like I like that.
That's what you want. A game that sticks with you when you're not playing it.
Not like Children of the Sun.
Like what? Children
of the Sun.
Not like Children of the Sun.
Keep coming back. I think we've mentioned that game more than any other on this consistently on this podcast.
Maybe we love that game.
Do we actually love it?
But yeah, it's definitely the kind of game that like you need to. I feel like it's best played in a binge way because you want to keep the knowledge fresh in your mind. if you spend time away from it, it's going to be like starting all over again.
Yeah, it
Unless
is
you
like
take,
almost
detailed
literally
notes.
starting all over again.
Yeah.
Learned that really pretty quick.
Yeah.
I think I took a couple days or a few days between my first session and the second session. And I was like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, it slows you down. So,
yeah.
I guess we could take this like time to talk a little bit about how the world is set up, because it basically is a sandbox, but a small, like localized area. You have the house. There's a neighboring church, and there's a park. There's also a road with there's a boat,
Right.
and a ship.
Just has a few basically different areas that are kind of little hubs of things that you can do in those hubs, but you can move. They're not open to you from the very beginning. You have to figure out how to open up those areas. But once you do, you can move freely between them. There's no like loading times between anything or anything like that.
There's sometimes multiple pathways into them. Different ways that you can enter them.
At the beginning, you definitely get lost. You get like, how the hell did I end up here type of thing. Sort of like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, where you end up somewhere and you're like, how the hell did I get here? I don't remember which way I came right. So I mean, it's kind of cool though. And then by the end of it, you kind of figure out everything, every shortcut, every direction, where everything's located. So you kind of
become an expert in the area.
Right. Which is really
so is this game essentially a scavenger hunt? It's basically a scavenger hunt. You have photos that tell you where to get stuff, and then you go get it. And it's figuring out the most efficient way to scavenger hunt. Essentially.
It's not just hunting, though. It's not just hunting things. There's things on top of that. Like you have to get items and use those items in certain places. And I love the little tooty horn that you get. That one's really fun. That
like tames the ghosts.
Yeah, that tames the ghosts. But you can just toot it wherever you want, and it just sounds funny. So yeah, there's a lot of things that a lot of interactions that you do. It's not just picking stuff up.
And then there is some like having to like suss out, like they're not deep puzzles or anything, but there is some like connecting the dots and trying to figure out where something is most likely to fit. Like you find a goldfish. Well, where do I put the goldfish? Oh, I found a goldfish bowl. In that sense, it kind of reminds me of like Monkey Island series.
Oh yeah, it's definitely similar to a point and click. Yeah, definitely similar to a point and click.
I mean,
basically, we're
some
just
of those
telling
things are so random.
That you're wrong, Phil, and it's a good game.
Well, he didn't say it was a bad
game. I didn't say it was bad. I didn't say it was bad.
You just played it. You played it in a manner that was not very fun.
They told me a job. I woke up and it's like, they told you to go to work and you can't show up to go to work and not do your job and expect to reach the goal.
You took that very seriously.
Yeah, it was like do the gardening. That was like the main objective of the game. So, and I'm a garden though, so that's what I do.
But the thing is, well, there's kind of hints. Maybe we should go into the story, but there's kind of hints. You meet like a ghost sort of thing that tells you whoa. You don't really have to garden, that kind of thing.
All right, let's get into the vibes. I'll lead on this one. So I touched on it a little bit, and I mentioned how Sokpop Collective has a very similar look to all their games, but the art style is very like colorful, but everything looks. We mentioned a little bit. Everything looks a bit bizarre and off in this game, and it starts out kind of seeming like I don't know. It has this weird like balance between pleasant, fun, and colorful. But I want to compare it to like Mulholland Drive or Land Empire or something, where like David Lynch loves to like compare like Happy Suburban or Blue Velvet. Happy suburban life, colorful, sunny, with like macabre, horrible things happening underneath the surface.
For sure. I'd say Lost Highway as well.
Yeah. That's kind of he had a passion for that kind of thing, and I can kind of see that kind of balance here. You could play this as a gardening game primarily, and probably just get down with the happy gardening vibes and ignore everything else.
But can you? I was actually slightly disappointed in that you can't. just do that.
It's not very deep in terms of the gardening
No.
mechanics, but
it is like partially a horror game.
oh yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
it has lots of jump scares.
that's my biggest complaint. Not to cut you off, but that was my biggest complaint about this game is that there's
Jump
just way
scares?
too many jump scares, like cheap jump scares.
they get a little annoying, but the very first one was like, whoa. That
Yeah,
kinda
yeah.
like,
No, they get you. They really get you.
I think
'Cause you're
I
not
think I
expecting
put
it
this
at all.
on at like 2 a.m. or something, and I was just like, yeah, we just put on this gardening game, and like I said, I really was genuinely just wanted to like, yeah, this is cool. I'm gonna just water plants and garden all day. That's not bad. And then the first thing came out, I was like, what the, I'm just trying to chill here.
Yeah.
So it was interesting though. It keeps you on your toes.
but even still, like everything is very like low res and kind of messy looking.
Yeah.
Even though it is in 3D. But even still, the jump scares do manage to get you because of the way that they're presented, you know. And I think it's that juxtaposition with like everything seeming bright and happy, and then suddenly, you know, there's somebody standing in the window. Like,
Right.
standing in the window thing happens quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
Like,
really
Yeah.
often.
I
I think the first one that I got was actually when I was the first playthrough. I wanted to do something in the church at night, and then when you're in the church at night, ghosts like pop up on screen for like half a second, and they make a really annoying noise. It scared the shit out of me the first time it happened.
I think the first jump scare I got was in the car garage. You go into the car garage next to the house, and you pick up a key on the wall, and then when you turn around, somebody like shuts the door.
That was the
on
first
you.
one for me.
This shuts the door. Yo,
Yeah,
is
it's
not
like
the dog
you pick
barking?
up No, it's like
No.
behind the broken like okay, well, I don't want to talk about it. You go to the broken fence and you open the
yeah,
door,
when you
pick
get
the
the
thing,
garden
you turn
key,
around.
that one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
That one.
that's right. The garden key.
Maybe that was the first one, right? Maybe. Yeah, that would make sense because that's how you get into the garden.
Right.
Which is
Yeah,
where the
I think
church is.
that's pretty early on, but similar things do happen. But there's also like it starts to get into like culty vibes. Like, there's some kind of like cult demon presence throughout. I guess we got to get into the story, but maybe we can just jump into that.
The one thing I would mention about the vibes that yes, it's a horror, but there's nothing grotesque. Like there's a little bit of blood sometimes, but it's very, very like lighthearted
it's-
blood.
It's kind of like
cartoony.
PG.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's cartoony. It's
Everything
very cartoony.
looks cartoony. You do see skeletons and you do see dead bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I think you
But it's
even
it's
see
pretty PG.
severed hand.
Like
Yeah.
Right. It's pretty light.
it's like the Disneyland ride version of like a horror, spooky
You're right.
horror
It's
thing
not,
or
it's
something
not
like
like
that.
playing Resident Evil or anything like that.
Yeah.
No. I think the jump scares are probably the more frightening thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
But,
There's a lot of
we're
what we
already-
said. There's also just a lot of like general trippiness to it. I feel like that's another thing. You know, just
Yeah,
the, like,
no, there's a lot of weird
the
shit that you encounter.
wonky, visuals, the like ultra saturation that happens a lot of times, and the sounds. And
You
things
find
that.
like
It's kind
these
of this whole
weird
trippy vibe.
doors and stuff that don't really make sense, and like you'll be teleported to different areas
Yeah,
and kind of
Right.
strange things like that. So yeah, there's some cool stuff in there.
Yeah,
Intriguing
like
stuff.
places that open up that don't like physically represent what that space should look like
Right.
once you go into them. Yeah, all kinds of weird trippy stuff like that, which is cool.
yeah.
Right. Phil, can you tell us as best you can about the story?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much about the story because I feel like it's spoiled. That's part of like the experience is the story it's in itself. So I don't really want to like say. But basically, the premise is you've been hired. You are, I think, a gnome that's been hired.
Are you a
to-
gnome? I don't think
No,
you're.
I
a
don't
gnome.
I don't know. I don't know. I just assume that
Why
I'm a
do you
gnome.
think you're a gnome?
Because I
There
think
are
the name
gnomes in
Grunn,
the game.
and there's gnomes everywhere. Yeah, and like the garden gnomes, and I feel like you should be a garden. You get what I'm saying? And you don't seem like a tall. You seem
should
like
be a gnome.
I'm going with a gnome. You're a Jorger. You're a Jorger. I'm a Darger.
I think you're just a guy.
I don't know
you're
if
just a
anyone's
normal
gonna get
person.
that reference. Okay, yeah, just a guy, and you wake up. It's kind of like having amnesia, and you've been for some reason told you need to do some gardening because you don't know what the hell's going on. You just wake up, and you're like, someone's like, you got to do some gardening. I hired you to do some gardening, and
I think you're just
and
hired for a job, basically.
you're hired for a job, and there's a bunch of like I said, the story is kind of like you are doing this job, and as you're doing the job, you just uncover various mysteries as to what's happening in this premise that you're working on. I mean, as you talk about the gameplay and the story, I think they're a little intertwined, and I don't want to say we've kind of talked about all the occult stuff and stuff that's going on. So saying more might spoil the actual like story of it all. But there are some mysteries that are kind of pervading this premise that you're on, and you as I don't even know who Grunn is.
Grunn is never mentioned in the game. That
It's
term
just
never
the-
I
comes
assume
up.
Grunn is I don't know, a word in Dutch
In,
or
like,
something
Norwegian.
that might have some meaning.
Maybe
If you look at
So,
their
yeah.
previous games, they all have similarly named titles.
maybe we should do like a. Do we want to do like a spoiler section where we can talk a little bit more deeper
I
about?
think we should.
Yeah,
You think so? Okay, so
Like-
spoiler alert. Spoiler.
yeah.
Spoilers.
We're gonna spoil
Okay,
it.
you can-
Spoil the game.
You can just like shut it off at this point and say, "Yeah, it was a good game. Thumbs up."
Yeah,
Or
go play it. If you're gonna go play it, don't
I
listen
do think
to this.
it's best played, without knowing what you're getting
yeah, I think
into,
it's
but I
you
think
shouldn't know that much, and that's like the core of the game experience. I think is not knowing what's going on. But
Right.
now that we're gonna go into it a bit more, so I mean, like there's several endings, so I'm not sure every ending would explain what's going on. I think it's only the good ending that really tells you really know what happened. But there's kind of like this demon or that someone has been murdered on this premises, and
Well,
their
it's the
ghost
it's
is
the
lingering.
person that hired you. It's the
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
who lives in the house that hired you.
And their spirit is like left. Their spirit is still there, and that's the person who's kind of haunting you. But they're not haunting you; they're actually kind of like just watching you, I guess. And they're kind of want you to help. They want you to figure out who this being is, or the being might take the form of different, like an animal or something like that. And you're trying to kind of solve the mystery to help free his soul, essentially. I think that's kind of the
it's
premise
not
of the
just
main
it's I think it's
story.
even more. It's what's the word? More high stakes than that.
yeah,
Like
there's
he's-
I
like
mean,
the demon's going to destroy the world type of thing if you don't
Right,
stop
and-
him.
and that's what I wasn't totally clear as to whether or not the ending, like when you the tasks that you're doing to reach the ending, once you start solving things, essentially you realize, okay, I need to get these idol statues,
Right.
um,
Which I think
there's
represents kind of like mini demons. Like
right, there's various demons that haunt the area, and then you have to place them underneath the church in these altars, and then that summons the large main demon,
the ultra
Which-
demon.
seems to be a mistake, like
Right.
as if you were
Yes.
being led to
Right.
do
I forgot
these
about that.
tasks, and you were being
So-
tricked into
Yeah.
doing it to summon the demon. Like
'Cause that's
the
what-
demon wanted you to summon him.
Well, let's move back just slightly because I can't remember what causes. Oh no, you can get some like basically some key that will allow you to basically interact and find this dude, the good guy, essentially the guy who's who hired you, who owns the house, and he explains to you this plot. Like, if you get this key, you can find him. He talks to you from the spirit world. He's like, we don't have much time. You have to don't worry about. That's what I was talking about. He's like, don't worry about the gardening. I actually don't need you to do that. But I would like you to try to, there's this shit going on. You have to stop the demon, and to do that, I can't remember exactly what he explained, but then again, after you do the idol thing, you get all 5 idols. You have to find those, bring them to the church. Then you can go into the house, and you see him, and you talk to him again, and he tells you that you've been tricked. Right? That's what he says.
right.
Like, this is not what you were supposed to do. So I don't really know what you were supposed to do, but because that's the only thing you can do, I think, at that point.
You're supposed to just get on the bus and leave, I guess.
I guess maybe you
Yeah.
can do that. Yeah, I did that.
Just
but
do your job
he
and go home.
instructs you to find his sword, which is what you need to. So after summoning the demon, you can go and find his sword. You have this timed mission at the end.
That's like the
And then
Master
you-
Sword from
Right.
Zelda.
You plunge it into the demon, and then everything goes back to normal, and you're the town is still there, and
Town
the
is
ghost
saved.
is sitting on the steps. Now, I know that I did not get this ending, but I know there is a way to bring him back to life.
Yeah, I didn't even bother with it,
Mm.
but you can do that. And you have to do it at the very final section where you have to find the different pieces of his soul. I actually got 2 of the 3 pieces without even really trying, but I didn't realize there was one more hidden in like the fridge or something like
So
that.
we mentioned playing the there's a little trumpet recorder flute thing that you get that you can play to these whenever you find like a dead body or a skeleton. You can play it and it like tames a ghost. I think there's like 6 of them total. Is that maybe that's part of the
I don't actually know.
quest in order to bring the guy to life?
I don't know what that is because you have to do it. Yeah, you don't. I don't know what the point of that is. All I know is that you have to find the souls. But maybe you do.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to do that first before you can find those souls within the house, like the pieces of his soul.
Yeah. I didn't go as far as to try and get all of those, but
Yeah.
it seemed hard to do in the time limit.
There
Yeah.
are
And
11
still be
endings,
able
or
to-
11 or 12 endings. So you don't.
11,
I guess like one or two of them is what we're talking about, but then the
There-
other 10
yeah.
are like,
Some of them are just deaths. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think half of them are probably just deaths, and then the other ones are just like different. Yeah, you go home, or you just have a picnic, or you just something.
Oh, yeah,
some
the
other
picnic
stuff.
room. That's what
So-
you get when you do all the gardening. If you do all the gardening, you get to have a picnic, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
That's pretty-
I thought the picnic ending was going to be like a good ending, like one of the good endings. I
Right,
guess it
right.
kind of is, but
It's just basically like, yeah, you just did your job and you fucked off. And
I felt so like proud once I got all the stuff in order to have the picnic, and then realized, oh, this is nothing.
That's
it's not the
what-
real ending.
That's life, man. What do you want?
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like the mystery was cool. It was not like, it's pretty simple, I guess. Like it's basically find these idols, put them in, getting into the church itself is a whole puzzle on its own. Finding the idols is a puzzle on its own. And then once you do that, you have a small time limit. You're like on a short timer to find the sword that he tells you about, which actually you can get earlier in the game. You don't have to do it at that point. You can do it earlier in a different area, kind of randomly, which is kind of strange. But yeah, you have a short amount of time to go get the sword and then go just hit the demon with it. And then you're done.
So to people that
sounds
don't
fun.
know what other Outer Worlds or this type of game is, it's kind of like if you know what to do, you could finish all this stuff in like 20 minutes, 30 minutes or
I
something
would
like that.
say
No, much
or
faster. You
Even
can
a,
probably finish it in 5. Probably.
even a precursor to
Oh,
that
sure.
is Mist.
Yeah, Mist for sure. I was definitely thinking about Mist, but this is much more. It's less trial and error, I think, in this
But-
one.
But Mist, if you know
Well, maybe.
what to do, that first Mist game, you can finish that game in 5 minutes.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
If you know the answers like that you get from going to all the other areas. It's
Yeah.
completely knowledge based,
Yeah. This definitely reminded me of Mist and those types of games.
but much smaller. But I think like the length, the mystery, like it kind of was perfect for me. And,
Yeah.
it didn't wear out its welcome.
Yeah, I'm glad it was the length that it was. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with this game.
What other endings did you guys discover in your playthroughs? So we mentioned
I
the
think I
bus
got
one. I had the
9.
bus ending. I had the picnic.
Yeah,
I got the death where you drown.
I got that one too.
That was the first one that I had, was the drowning. What the fuck else was there?
drowning.
There was
the
the
mist.
there was that hallway that
um,
opens up in your cabin, in your shed where you live.
Right.
There's a
and
weird
if you
door
don't
that
have the
opens.
secret key,
Yeah,
You-
if you go
you
down there,
die.
you die.
yeah.
I got that.
There's
one.
the the blue, touching the blue thing. If you don't have the compass for the thing, you just get like
Go into the
lost or something
maze.
like that.
If you go into the maze
Maze.
without the compass, yeah.
I never did go in the maze without the compass.
Oh, the dog can kill you. The dog can kill you.
dog. Yeah, I never got killed. by the dog.
You can cut all the flowers. You cut all the flowers in the church, and
Oh,
you
you're
die.
right. Right. Yeah.
So
Cut
I think
all the
that might have been my
flowers.
first death. I think actually.
I wondered what happened
Oh.
if you cut all those flowers, because I cut a few and then there was a warning.
Yeah, it's
you
like,
better
you
not
don't-
cut
It was
these
making a
flowers.
sound. I was like, whatever, and then like I just kept cutting them up
Cutting away.
Yeah.
for some reason.
No, I
So-
tried it. I just wanted to see what would happen.
Did you, Phil especially, did you try to complete the gardening in all 3 locations, the park, church, and the house?
Well, yeah, I think that's what I tried to. That's what I think was like why I felt like it was kind of annoying. I was like, oh, I got to do all the places again, and like
But you tried to do that on every run.
I tried to do it in every place. Yeah, I was like trying to like run around, like go from
But
point
every
A to
run that
point
you
B.
had every time you started the game up, every time you just started a
and
run.
I'm just chopping
Wow.
shit while I'm doing it, and like just trying to. And I don't think I ever actually did all 3 of them, but I was just like, I gotta try to get it all like down.
Did you guys? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. But yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
did you guys get the egg ball? That was a weird one
think
for
I
me,
did.
but I
The
did.
one that you give,
I didn't
the one
know
that
to
you
give
give
it
to
to.
the guy behind the gas station.
Yeah.
He looked like a fucking junkie.
It took me forever to get that egg ball. I had no idea. You get it from that
You
food
get it
truck.
from
The food truck.
the food truck. Yeah.
But I don't
Yeah.
remember how you get the food truck to be open.
It's a
I
certain
thought
time
you
of
just
day.
have
I
to
think.
go a certain time of day.
Oh, that's all it
when
was?
the food
Yeah.
truck is open.
I guess
So,
I
like,
just got
it's
Because you
kinda
need
like
that to get
early
the
evening.
instruments for the kids.
I never
There's
finished
3
that.
kids playing.
Right.
They want to play a concert in the park with a
Right.
creepy guy
The
watching them.
creepy part. I never
You know what?
got
Like
that.
the vibe of this game is basically like if you were the gardener on the Shining's premises and you didn't know what was going on, like inside the house or something.
You're like the caretaker.
You're just
that guy.
like the caretaker outside, but you didn't
Yeah.
know all this murdering and stuff was happening. That's kind of what's happening in this game.
There's the punks with
Yeah.
the scooter that get to like a crash or something like that. They die.
Yeah, I love that. There's all this little like world building.
Yeah, there's like
story
little
telling
tiny
that
stories
happens.
that happen on the side that you just have to, you don't necessarily see.
What was your best or worst moment from this game, Matt?
For me, it was actually right off the bat. It was when you start up the game, and you mentioned this in the beginning, but it gives you this kind of precursor to before you start. It says, this is a very normal gardening game based on like my grandpa's garden and whatever. And that for me was just really funny. When I read that, like I immediately knew this is not going to be a normal fucking game. This is going to be something strange and bizarre. And I just love that they put that in there because it was really, I don't know, I found it super amusing. So even though there was a lot of moments within like the actual gameplay that I really enjoyed, that was just that was like a highlight for me that really struck me when I read that. It was really funny.
Nice. How about you, Phil?
And it's funny because I actually thought this was going to be a serious gardening game. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'm down for just gardening and whatever. But worst moment was, I think the first time I got really close to getting that true ending. And I was like, okay, I got everything. I just need to like, for some reason I couldn't get like one of the idols, maybe because of the time of day or something at that point in time. And I was like, all right, when I wake up tomorrow, I'll finish that and I'm going to be done. And then it was like Monday afternoon already. You get where I'm going with this. And it just ended, and I was so annoyed because that was the
That happened
first
to me
point
too.
that I was so close to beating it, and it was over. And there's nothing you can do because you're just out of time. So for me, that was the worst moment. And that's what I kind of felt like, oh, I got to start again just to basically get to, which of course is easier the next time you do it, but
if you think that
it's
you
a
have
little
to,
frustrating.
If you think that you have to cut all the grass again, that would be, I wouldn't.
Well,
be
yeah,
happy.
that too. I was like, oh, and that's like the number one thing I was thinking about. Oh, I got to spend so much time cutting grass and chopping up. What are those things like mole hills and stuff
Right.
like that?
Yeah, just
And,
tedious work.
And watering the plants. I was like, oh, I got to do all that again.
You know, there
so
is
it's
a way
like-
to instantly water all the plants. Did you get that?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Like throwing the coin into the
Right.
well.
Yeah,
I think you do have to water all the plants.
you do have to
get
because that's the way you
end.
open that door. But you can do it
Yeah.
manually,
If
or
you
can
do the watering it just does like all the outside ones immediately for you.
if you do the well thing. Yeah,
Yeah, the well
Yeah,
thing. You
make
but
go
they're
to
all
the
it
outside.
rain.
They're all outdoors. Yeah.
Yeah.
How
But,
about you, Dennis?
For me, probably I would say that first initial jump scare in the garage.
You're saying best or worst?
Best
Okay.
moment. Because that was when it like really piqued my interest, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, this is not a normal game at all. Like,
Nice.
Yeah.
this is, like, who's that guy? Is somebody following me? Like, I got really locked into the mystery at that point. So like, oh, like, because I didn't know if there's ghosts at that point yet or what, like,
Right.
or if there's a demon. I just thought like somebody's watching me,
Yeah. No, that
Um,
was the first real hint. Like, this is
Mm.
not normal.
Up until that point, there was like odd, bizarre stuff, but that was when it was like, whoa, there's a real mystery going on here that I need to get behind. So that was my
nice
best moment. Overall, I didn't really have any bad moments, I would say, with this game.
Yeah, me either. Frustrating parts maybe, but not like bad.
All right, let's get into our final thoughts about the game, and let me know if it was worth your time. Phil.
My final thoughts are: it's not too long of a game. I think it is worth your time, and if you skipped all the spoilers and stuff, and you could really jump in and explore this game and experience everything it's got to offer in a very fresh state of mind. It's an enjoyable game, but I was looking forward to just gardening, a very simple garden simulator. So in that way, I was a little like slightly disappointed, and there's a few frustrations with replaying the game in redoing it. But overall, I still do think it is actually. I'm not as high as you guys are on it, but I think it's a decent game.
There must be some gardening simulators that are actual garden simulators.
I think there are.
Play.
Yeah, well,
or
that might be too serious. I want to be like a gnome who does it's like a Final Fantasy garden simulator or something. Maybe you know what I mean. Maybe I want a fantasy universe
something with like
garden
a
simulator.
Story
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to be an actual gardener. But you get what I'm saying.
I want something more. Yeah,
a bit off. Serious job.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, this game was definitely worth my time, and it's pretty short. You could finish it within 3 to 4 hours playing normally. And I loved it. I thought it was one of the best games I've played this year for this podcast. Probably my favorite game that we've played so far this year. So yeah, definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I really enjoyed this game, and I would just recommend it to almost anyone. I think it's just a fun little experience that keeps you interested, as long as you don't get locked into the simulation of it. But I think it made me think like there could be a whole new genre of like those. There's so many simulation type games, like we've brought them up before, like Euro Truck Simulator, Power Wash Simulator.
Yeah, you could have. Yeah.
How cool would it be to start merging those types of games,
like make a real gardening
like
sim, but
taxi driver simulator,
but make it horror,
like House Flipper. You go to flip a house, and then you find like a secret door in the floor, and there's like a sex dungeon or something. I don't know, like
phasmophobia. It turns into phasmophobia.
I think
unexplored
really
genre.
Cool.
That's true.
Maybe we need to start the Limited Lives Collective.
Kind of like it's just like an unassuming thing, an assuming game where you feel like it's going to be cool and fun and safe and chill, but it quickly turns into something
like turn all those like those these games. There's a truck simulator, the train simulator, Japanese train simulator, and all that stuff. Like, but add another element into it.
I feel like Five Nights at Freddy's is kind of like that. If you've played that, it kind of starts off that way. Like you're just checking security cameras and making sure there's no one stealing anything. But it's a little bit more on that. Like people know what it is when you get into it. It's pretty obvious. However, but that game is also extremely popular. So that kind of thing, I think.
But that's the kind of thing that like I feel like it'd be hard to do in something that was a more fleshed out game than this, like a larger game than this, because you enter the realm of potentially like actually tricking people and pissing them off. Like,
right. Yeah.
People who just want that simulator. So you've got to admit like to the truth about what the game is.
Yeah, I mean, that surprise though, I think is what people want. So some people at least. Some people, fucked up people. Yeah. People have problems. Like
some
us.
Bastards. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this podcast. Our next game is going to be a brand spanking new indie title called Travel on Pigeon. So look out for that episode in the near future. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at limitedlivescast@gmail.com. That's right. We got we even moved on to a new email address. So all our social medias have changed as well. So you can find us on those channels at Limited Lives Cast and on YouTube at Limited Lives TV. And remember, every gaming moment is a chance for greatness.